This is as big a deal as anything. As I told, this is like Lombardi coming back to Green Bay, if that were possible. This is what that's like.
And what about in Washington, David? We've seen in the last few years, Michael Jordan came to the Wizards, Jaromir Jagr came to the Capitals, even Steve Spurrier joining the Redskins. That created some buzz, but this tops maybe all three of those combined, right?
Yeah, it's none of them compare to this. None of them compare. And I was at Jordan's press conference. Jordan was a huge story nationally, obviously. There were a lot of national writers and a lot of national TV people there. Locally, people knew him, obviously, and were curious about him. But Michael Jordan never won in Washington. Joe Gibbs won championships in Washington. And for a town that didn't have much in the way of success in terms of its sports teams, what Joe Gibbs was able to do in Washington is so much bigger than football. The Redskins bring this city together in a way that nothing else does. There are all kinds of divisions among people, Michael, in this town. You know, rich and poor, black and white, but everybody loves the Redskins. And especially, I think, for African-American people, Mike, the Redskins for a long time were not their favorite team because they were the last team to integrate. And Joe Gibbs came in. Doug Williams won Super Bowl 22 as an African-American quarterback. That was a huge deal.
And what about the current players? Do they truly understand what's going on here?
I don't think they have any clue. I mean, you're seeing the old guys starting to come in now. Doc Walker, who played tight end, and Tony McGee was a defensive end, Neil Olkowitz, a linebacker. They know. But the young guys, there aren't that many young guys here right now. And the pressures are going to begin in the next half hour or so. I don't think they have any idea because the Redskins have been so bad the last few years, and they have no idea how good it could be for them in this town when the Redskins are winning. And so Joe Gibbs is a link back to that past. They'll get an idea when this team starts being successful, as I think it will be under Gibbs, how big the Redskins are in this town.
David, do you sense already something different in the air there at Redskin Park and around Washington, D.C.?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, people are absolutely giddy about this, Michael. I mean, people are giddy. They're laughing and there's smiles on people's faces. I mean, the last 2 years under Steve Spurrier in Washington have been a nightmare, train wreck. People not coming to Dallas games or coming to see the NFC East games. It's something that you never would see. And now people are so excited about Joe Gibbs coming back. They feel like winning is just around the corner.
And finally, David, what do you sense and what you've heard and what you know will be the biggest adjustment for Joe Gibbs after being away for so long?
Well, he's going to have to get to know personnel again. Obviously, he's got to learn his team, first of all, who's on it and what they do well, but that's what new coaches always do. Keep in mind he's going to have extra quarterback schools and camps that he'll be able to adjust to his new teammates. But I don't think any of that other stuff, getting to know today's players, all that sort of thing, free agency people talk about, keep in mind that the Redskins won Super Bowls with three vastly different teams, with three different quarterbacks. And Joe Gibbs was the constant through all of that. So I don't think he'll have any problems adjusting to the new personnel and the new rules of free agency. He did it before.
I agree. Joe Gibbs always was adjusting and readjusting as the times went on. All right, David Aldridge from Redskin Park, and we'll hear more from you and from Joe Gibbs coming up at the top of the hour. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
And here's a look at the longest spans between coaching in NFL history. Gibbs last coached in '92. He will be the sixth coach ever to go 10 years or more between stints with a single team. Only Joe Buck, Chuck Knox, and Ted Marchibroda have had longer such stretches away from a franchise. And again, we will have that news conference live coming up at 5 Eastern. And you can sense it from David there. I mean, they are absolutely giddy down in Washington, D.C. about Joe Gibbs' return there.
The only person that has come out publicly and said, you know what, this might not work, is Len Pasquarelli, who we talked to earlier, who said, look, he thought that Jack Kent Cooke was looking over his shoulder. Wait till he gets a load of Dan Snyder. We'll see, but he's the only guy to say it so far. Michael, thank you very much. When we come back again later this half hour, it is an important day in the NBA. Jeff Van Gundy going back to New York and going back against Stephon Marbury. It is for 3 Super Bowl titles, 12 years with the Redskins. Joe Gibbs back after 11 years out of the NFL. And in NASCAR, Joe Gibbs back in Washington, D.C. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny. This is the afternoon edition of ESPN News, and we welcome those of you watching right now on ESPN2. We are moments away from the official reintroduction of Joe Gibbs, again officially introduced as the new coach of the Washington Redskins. We'll have it for you live. We're just moments away. As soon as they get up there, we'll go to it live at Redskin Park in Virginia. Also, Mark Schlereth, former Redskin offensive lineman, and Sean Salisbury, former NFL quarterback, will join us, and we'll go through this and talk about the whole situation with the Redskins. And can you lose touch in 11 years? We haven't seen that with Bill Parcells and Dick Vermeil. Also, Joe Gibbs, so much success in NASCAR. Figure he could figure things out with the salary cap. Michael Kim joins us right now with the top stories of the day. Again, all throughout the day, Michael, the only person that says, no, not so fast, right yet, was Len Pasquarelli saying, look, there's a lot of ownership issues there, and that could hamstring even a man such as Joe Gibbs.
So far, he is the lone dissenting voice on this. Everyone else believes that Joe Gibbs will turn that around down in D.C. In the meantime, we have some other top stories from some other sports, BK. We started off set to reintroduce Joe Gibbs as head coach of the Washington Redskins.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Tonight's one of the most exciting days of my life, and as a lifelong Redskin fan, it should be for all of us. First off, I'd like to just say thank you very, very much to Pat and Joe. Welcome home. I know my dad's smiling down on this today. I know you're there, smiling on this. This is some day, but I'd just like to introduce the head coach and team president of the Washington Redskins, Joe Gibbs.
Well, first of all, I'm nervous and excited, so if I make a few mistakes here, you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to kind of wrestle my way through this. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the welcome. I mean, to see the people out front, try to stop and say thanks to each one of them. To thank, I really got to tell all of you, I had all the fun. So everybody's thanking me, and I said I'm the guy that had all the fun when I was here before. So I just really appreciate the welcome, and a little embarrassed by it, so much attention. So first of all, just thanks to everybody that was out there, all the Redskin fans. It gave me the memories again. I did want to start because Daniel mentioned Pat. I got to tell you, my wife probably has more courage than any person I know, and so I just want to start off by thanking Pat, and she's always there when the boys and I want to chase some dream, knowing that it's going to be extremely hard for her. So I want to start by saying a big thanks to Pat. Thanks, Mom. The other thing I wanted to do is things have changed since my years here, and the best part of it is all our new additions to our family. So today we brought JD and his wife, Melissa, right here. We got, don't clap, hold the clapping to the end, we got too many. We got Jackson, my namesake, he can get anything he wants. Miller is here running around someplace, and little Jason. And then we've got Coy, and Coy's wife is Heather. I think they're running around here both. There's Heather. And Coy's here someplace, and we got our little guy, Ty, that's running around the middle of all of that. And we got our fifth on the way from Heather. I'm all excited about that, and if I can buy another one, I'm buying it. So I'll tell you that right now. And both my boys outpunted their coverage with their wives, I want to tell you that. So that's introduction of the family. And so I want to also make sure we're so excited. As you guys know, I got to tell you, I'm a very small part of this. I go into it knowing that there is no way that we can accomplish what we want without a great coaching staff. Daniel and I have been working nonstop ever since we signed on to take the job, and we've been as hard as we can trying to round up, and I think we're going to have a terrific coaching staff. I wanted to announce three of those guys are here today. Don Bro, been with me forever. Don and Harleen, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't tell one story at this point. The very first time I went for a job interview was at Florida State. Don called me on wheel back. He's trying to wine and dine me, and he's got big steaks and barbecue and all this stuff, and I fly across the country. And so Harleen's in there working, they're doing the steaks and everything. So when Don stepped out of the room, you know, he's trying to recruit me as hard as he can. I turned around to Harleen and I said, Harleen, and what do you think about this place? And she spun around and she goes, you kidding me? I hate it. So that got us off to a real rugged start there. But she doesn't hate really Florida State or anything about it. It was just her way of saying, you better check your whole card here. We got the Bugs is back on the scene. There's Bugs. Bugs, and I can definitely tell you the best part of him is at home, Brenda. And behave yourself, okay? We got Jack Burns. Jack is here. We're all excited about having Jack. Jack and Robin on board, so we got our first, and there's some other guys that are committed on the coaching staff weren't able to be here because they're working on trying to help us get other coaches. So we got all of that going. It's a real process, as you know, in the NFL. Next, I got to tell you, Daniel, you and Tanya, just want to tell you I really appreciate this opportunity. And I think it's that I need to, I know that Brittany and Tiffany and Jerry are a big part of that. I want to stop for a minute and say, here's what I know about Daniel so far. We got together several times. I asked him to do things for the youth home, Youth for Tomorrow. And as you guys know, nobody gets paid. It's just strictly voluntary. I had Daniel come down. He's had to stand in front of 100 people and get your picture taken. He didn't have to do that. Gave of his resources and everything. And so the first time I got to really know Daniel was in that situation. And then to see what he thought of this franchise and that he was willing to obviously financially do all he had to do to try and buy this great franchise. So I saw that. And then, of course, the thing that probably impressed me as much as anything is the way he treated his family. I got to tell you, Arlette, I'm going to be real nice to you because I understand you could fire me. Is that right? She's an owner. So you can have anything you want. And Michelle's sitting next to her. I'm going to make sure I take care of them. And then while I'm on that, Fred Drasner, Michelle, Arlette, Dwight. Dwight's just been a real friend to us, and Bob Rothman and Fred Smith. I really appreciate all of you being the management team. I really appreciate that. But anyway, what I was saying there, to see the way Daniel treated his mother and father, just meant a lot to me. And I wish Jerry could be here. I know he does. And to see that impressed me. And so what we're doing, the owner and the head coach, what we're doing is forming a partnership, and the partnership is going to have to be this. It's got to be one that can overcome a lot of adversity because it's going to happen to us as we try and move the team forward. And so we're trying to develop a partnership, but we're just getting started. And I will say this, besides those other things that I've had a chance to witness over the last 4 days has been about as intense. By the way, Corey came in on the side over here. My son will also be on the coaching staff. I wanted to say that Dan and I have been working for the last 4 days as hard as we can work on the coaches, recruiting the coaches, and all the things that it takes with that. And I got to tell you something. It's already hit us. We've faced some adversity in that process. And so to see the way he has stepped up already for me and the coaches is really important to all of us. So having said all that, I just want to say a big thanks. And we're forming a partnership to try and move things ahead. So that's very important to me. The next thing I would say, hey, you talk about this challenge. I kind of look at it. I didn't wear my Super Bowl ring. I got one. But here's the way I look at it, really. This is all new. This is different for us. We're trying to go forward with our players and a whole new group of people. And from this point on, the past doesn't buy us much other than relationships. We got great relationships. I do know a lot about the town, and so we'll get to that in a minute. But it really, we're focused on the future. We want to try and do something great here, and that's the way I'm looking at it. It's a whole new deal for me. I got to prove myself, and all the coaches, we got to prove ourselves all over again, and that's the way I'm approaching it. Okay, this new challenge. Here's what it takes. It takes a great team effort, and we all know that. And we've got one part of it, one crucial part covered, and that's the fans. I think back, and I think the one thing when I started thinking about coaching, I got to tell you what affected me. I think back to the stadium. I think back to all the things that happened there. I think about our fans and the fact that when I would go in that stadium, I don't care how cold it was, I don't care what the situation was, they were always there and they were always ready. I felt like we had one of the most miserable places in the world for anybody else to try and play. They didn't like coming here. And it's because of our fans and the interest, and I know football is important here, and so the first part of this teamwork that it's going to take to make us a good football team is already in place. Our fans, I want to say thanks to every single one of you. I remember all those days, and we're looking forward to a lot of days going forward. So the fans are here. Players, I look on the side, and I catch a few guys now. I didn't even see you over there, Joe. We had guys here. I'll just share one little thing with you. We played a Monday night game here, and I think it was '84. We got off to a horrible start, and I think we were like 1-2. And I'll just share this with you. I always talked to the team the night before. It was a Monday night game, and so when I walked out on that Monday night to the locker room before we go out, we always had a team prayer. And for some reason, I just said this: if any of you guys got anything to give the Washington Redskins, you need to give it tonight. We're in trouble. And I remember, we had that prayer, and I stood back up, and I'm going to tell you what I witnessed. A lot of those Redskins had tears coming out of their eyes. And that's what it takes. I think you got to have players like that. I'm so excited about getting started a new relationship with all our players here, but I was blessed before with some great guys that laid it on the line, and some of them are here today, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. So anyway, the players, I just say to you, I think we're coaching and playing in a place where football is really important, and it's exciting to be a part of it. The coaching staff, obviously, we're going to do everything we can. I'm so excited about the guys that we already have lined up. We think it's going to be a group that I think the players, the most important thing for a player is, I think, is he wants somebody to help him to be at his best, and that's what we're going to try and do. So the coaches are all excited, and I just want to say it takes a great front office. Everybody here knows that. It takes great ownership. I'm looking forward to working to everybody here, the whole front office, the scouting department, and Vinny. I'm looking forward to that relationship and us moving things ahead, and all of us. It takes great teamwork. Hey, listen. It's not one person. Certainly I'm a small part of it. It's all of us together, every single person that loves the Redskins. That's what it's going to take for us to win games. And so those are the four components I think are super important. And the only one that we can say right now that's proven itself is our fans. The rest of us, we got a lot of work to do. I did want to address one thing. I come here with the most humble spirit, I think, because, again, having said my part of this, we know I really truly believe it is a small part. I'm anxious to be a part of this, and I'm coming into this with our eyes wide open. Here's the deal. We're going to play probably in, I think, one of the toughest divisions, if not the toughest division in football. When you stop and think about it, we're going to play Philly. He's done a dominant job. Andy Reid, I got great respect for him, extremely well coached, and probably have a chance this year to win a Super Bowl. I got home field advantage in the NFC. You turn around and you got nightmares. They're going to play Bill Parcells and the Dallas Cowboys. Very first year they jump out, they're number one in defense. You start worrying up here, we may not make a yard. So I got that buried in the back of my mind. And then, of course, you got the Giants and Tom Coughlin coming in there. That's going to be a whole new deal. They're excited. If there's any place you want to go and you don't want to go to play as Giant Stadium, I look at that with eyes wide open and saying, hey, we're going to have to really be special to be able to play in this division and do what we want to do and to win football games. So I'm excited. Obviously, I got a lot of things to get caught up on. I want to make a fast pace and try to be a good learner, dive back in here, get everybody here to kind of help us move this thing forward. So I'm all excited about that. Last thing I want to say, hey, all you can ask for in life is to have, I'm probably the most fortunate guy in the world to have the opportunities I have. And I look at this as a great opportunity, and I just, I got to tell you, the Lord has absolutely blessed me beyond belief. And so I'm just excited about going forward and looking to Him. Thank y'all.
Well, there's Joe Gibbs again being reintroduced as the Redskins head football coach. At one point in the 80s and mid-90s, the NFC East had won 7 of 10 Super Bowl titles. Once the premier division, again restocking with Gibbs, Parcells, with Dallas, Andy Reid in Philadelphia, and Tom Coughlin now with the New York Giants. If you're watching us on ESPN2, get Brian Ketty here. We'll send you over to Billiards here on ESPN News. Sean Salisbury, Mark Schlereth will join us. We'll have the rest of this news conference, and we'll talk to Charles Gibson as well from ABC on his interview with Pete Rose. More from Joe Gibbs in Virginia when we return.
I remember I was checking things off, and I hadn't got to the coaching yet. And I got down there, and I said, and when I got to the coaching, she looked over at me, and she went, "Oh, my God." she went like that. So it started with that and kind of moved forward. And then really, no one thought this was going to be something that would happen. And so it was kind of a long process. I can't really recall how long, but it was several weeks.
Joe, what's the biggest adjustment that you're going to have to make after being away for this long?
Coming back here to all you media and have you guys call me all these nasty things. No, not true at all. But I think the biggest adjustment for me, obviously, the game moves at a very fast pace. It's been a long time since I've been here. I can't wait to dive into the film room. I'm curious about all the new things that are going on the field. I also think we have the cap system already heavily trying to work real hard on figuring that out. Of course, we got great people here along with Dan. They're gonna figure that out. I think I've got great support there. That's a huge deal. And I can tell you this: if you win with a core group of guys that really believe in the Redskins, and that's what we're going to try and do, preserve those guys in that group. So I think there's issues like the cap. I think there's new things on the field. And I got a steep learning curve here. I need to really get to work and bury myself in the film rooms and get caught up. Obviously, I think I'm going to be way down the road. I think we're going to have a great coaching staff, and that's really super important to me. So a lot of things. It's probably too many to mention. So.
Why this time are you back? Other teams have made runs at you before. Why this offseason did you decide to do this?
I think, let me mention one other thing there I left out. Obviously, the Rays team has been a huge deal for us. The Rays team is one of the biggest things that our family has. Obviously, it's our thing that we'll always on. And what happened, I think, is we started a process down there 12 years ago, and as I got back in it when I left here, it was fun for me. It was exciting. It was thrilling. We were building a family business and a race team. And today, the reason why I feel so good about where I am today and why I could do this, JD has been kind of hands-on running the race team. We got a great management team in place down there. Don Meredith, great wisdom, and works in our front office and everything. We got Jimmy Makar and Fatback and Zippy and Tony and Bobby. We got a great management crew. So I think that's part of the answer. Is it kind of moved to a point where they were getting ready to roll me out in the corner someplace and make it. I knew the first time that JD said, "No, we're not doing that." That I was in trouble. I got to go someplace where they'll listen to me. But over there, we have a great deal with Home Depot and Bob Nardelli and the guys down there, and Norm Miller and Interstate Batteries. They all, signed off on it. So that was a big deal, and so I think probably that had quite a bit to do with it. Obviously, the fact that Coy kind of got things rolling with the fact that he said he wanted to go back and try and coach. So I think there was a lot of things going on, and probably in my life, a lot of those things added up to the fact that Pat and I thought we could go back to coach.
You were a bit worried out when you last left. Given that, do you think your personal approach might change this time? Are you going to be the workaholic you used to be? Or?
Yeah, I'm sure that people could say burned out. I didn't feel that. I felt like that what had happened is the family had changed. If you remember, when I first came here, both boys, JD and Coy, would go to camp with me. Pat would come on the weekends. Then gradually JD graduated and went off, so I got separated from him to get a chance to see him play much. Coy then took off, went to Stanford. Now I became a football recluse. I'd go to camp and Pat would go see them. And I think what happened there came a point where there was 2 years left with Coy playing, and there were a lot of things going on personally, family-wise. And I said, you know, if I'm gonna miss a lot here. And I think it was kind of things changed in my life. I never thought any of that would happen, and so or dreamed about it. So I think that was a big issue. So as far as changing things, I want to be as creative as we can. Any new thing that's out there, we got a tremendous help from things like computers now and all the things. We're going to try and do all that. I want to get caught up on all of it, try and make the best decisions we can. Obviously, it takes a great effort. I know it's going to take a great effort on all those parts, but hopefully it's something that we can manage. But there's no getting around it. In football, you got to bust it. You know, the players and the coaches have to.
There's Joe Gibbs live in Virginia. We're going to take a short break. We'll get you back out to Redskin Park once again. We're live here on ESPN News. It's the afternoon edition. Once again, Sean Salisbury and Mark Schlereth, former Redskin offensive lineman, will join us in a few moments as well. We'll get you back out to Joe Gibbs, returning as Redskins football coach when we return. Here on the afternoon edition, let's get you back out to a Redskin Park live right now. Joe Gibbs reintroduced as Redskins football coach. He's already said that owner Dan Snyder stepped up to get the staff in place, admits that he has a steep learning curve. Here's Joe Gibbs, football coach for the Redskins once again.
Understands what the Redskins are all about. They've been there year in and year out. They've been through the good and the bad. They know good football. They know bad football, and they're going to let you know it when they don't like it. And they're also going to be probably, I think they'll make that stadium. If we're doing our part, playing and coaching, I think they'll make that stadium a place that other teams will have a tough time in.
Joe, did you consider the Atlanta Falcons as a head coach?
Yeah.
Did they consider you?
No, I think what happened there is originally I was down there, of course, and become real good friends with Arthur. Really felt a lot about him. He invited me in that situation there in the ownership thing in a little bitty way, and so we got to be real good friends. And I mentioned to Arthur at one point after everything, Dan Reeves' situation, everything had been concluded. I kind of said, I've been thinking about this, and he immediately lit up. We talked some, but it was more the talk of at that point of just kind of going through a process. When it got to a point where it was, I sat down with he and Rich at one point, but really it was a lot of me asking questions of them and Rich about, hey, the league, how it's changed and all that, getting advice. I've known Rich since he was 8 years old, and had a real good conversations with him, and really asking of Arthur and Rich, hey, tell me some about the NFL. But obviously when this job came open, I felt like it didn't really matter. To me, it wouldn't have mattered what team were placed. Obviously, I thought the world of them, but for me, it was more the Redskins. Hey, the Redskins, this is where I had those times. I have friends. We got the youth home. I got a lot of people here, and that fan base and everything. I just really think a lot about. So the answer to that is I couldn't coach anywhere else.
Joe, what are your duties as team president, and do you anticipate that will detract from some of the time you spend coaching?
No. We were very specific about that. Great conversations with Daniel and all that. My deal is, hey, I'm a coach. Obviously, I worked a lot with the offense, but having said that, I know that the heart of your team is special teams, and defense leads you to playoffs. And even though I coached and tried to stay, on the offense because I felt like that's where I could help the most. I envision all that being just the same. I'm not gonna be trying to take on other duties. Hey, I'm a coach. That's all I want. I want to coach, and I want to be a part of a real team here in the front office that helps us get players, that helps us keep players, and it takes a tremendous amount of support from me, because I'm buried in the film room most of the time. So I don't anticipate any change. There's nothing I'm going to do other than just try and coach.
Were you ever hesitant about returning to a place where you had so much success?
Absolutely. I would say this. I told Pat, there is no net. So I'm going to pray a lot, and everybody out there, I am hanging. We are the coach, and there is nothing down there, but there's nothing going to catch us. And you know, and I guess I was seeing life probably. That may be the biggest thrill of it. Hey, knowing how hard it is, but getting a chance to do something that's super hard. You know, it's hey, listen, it's probably going to be one of the toughest deals you can imagine. But I think as part of that too, there's a thrill of saying it's that hard and getting a chance to do it.
Joe, you said that you thought about this weeks ago, and then you started talking to Arthur Blank after the Dan Reeves situation developed. How long have you been talking to the Redskins? Take us through that process of how you got this job.
Yeah, timing, I'd probably have a tough time because I don't know. But it was, I think, from the time Daniel called me, it went real quick. And I think we had 2 meetings. And, you know, at one point, I think the first time we called, you know, it was a real quick meeting right after that. Then it was a quick process through that process. You know, I think our last meeting lasted 9 hours. We went over everything in the world you could think of, and talked it all out. So.
I know in your time at NASCAR, you developed a reputation as quite an effective recruiter in convincing good people to come work for you and stay with you. So, given that, could you speak a bit about the sales pitch that Mr. Snyder made to you and how he went about helping you make this decision, you and Pat?
Well, I think one of the things was the franchise. I think it means so much to Daniel. Obviously, but I've heard him say before I ever talked about any of this, say the most important thing here is the franchise. Yes, he owns it now, but it's us taking care of it, and at some point somebody else, you know, in the future, whether it's his kids or whatever, would have it. But I think I think as far as the sales pitch, I think it was more of us just talking over everything. Like I mentioned to you, there were several times that we'd been together, and it had nothing to do with football, and I kind of saw the way he, the friends he had, and the way he treated people, and all that. I'd already experienced some of that. And so I think when we started talking, it was, like I said, haven't worked with each other, didn't know, said, hey, we want a partnership here, and we're going to take off on this. And we both, I think Daniel described his part of it and what he thought. I described my part, the way it would work. And it's kind of one of those things you step out in faith. And like I said, we've already experienced a lot of things. The bullet's been flying, and I've had to go back and say, you know, hey, look, we're going after these coaches, and I did step over the budget, and there were a couple of those things. So, you know, I think it's just it's a kind of work in progress. But I think, as far as selling me, I think it was, you know, obviously very impressive what I kind of saw and the way we went about it.
Obviously, as a Redskins fan yourself, has it been difficult for you to watch the team struggle from afar the last 2 years?
I think anytime you see your team and you see struggles, I think I think you know you're wanting things to go well. But I probably had the best feeling of knowing how hard it was and how easy it is to get off some, and you get the wrong guy hurt. And I probably could empathize with that probably easier than a lot of other people, because I know we go to the Super Bowl in '87 and turn around '88 is our worst year. You know, it can happen to you in a heartbeat. And so I probably had a better, you know, more compassion and everything, you know, because I know how hard it is.
How do you think?
All right, there you go. Joe Gibbs live from Redskin Park in Virginia. Got a new football coach for the Washington Redskins after 11 years away. 12 years with the Redskins, 140 wins, 65 losses. If you combine the regular season and the postseason, put it all together, Joe Gibbs, 4th best winning percentage in the history of the NFL. I'm back here on ESPN News. Once again, Michael Kim will have the top stories of the day. We're going to have Mark Schlereth and Sean Salisbury join us in a few moments as well, and we'll break down what was being said during that news conference. And Michael, I know when they asked him about being the team president, he said it's going to take a lot of support from me. Basically, now he just has to report to himself. When he wants to get a player, he can consult with himself and his coaches. And
Dan Snyder.
But there's no one else there in that spot. He needs that power. And also saying that he got a lot of support from Dan Snyder when it came to putting his staff together. He wants to pay those top coaches that he's bringing in.
And a lot of those guys are being rewarded for being with him back in the early days and, you know, going along for the ride then. And now they're getting their just rewards.
Rightly so. When you win like that, it costs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we have some other top stories here, BK. Not related to story back with the Washington Redskins.
And we're going to be talking about that again. Michael, thank you very much. Again, we'll take a short break here on the afternoon edition. When we return, Mark Schlereth was there with Joe Gibbs and the Redskins. Mark Schlereth, Sean Salisbury join us, talking about Gibbs, that whole new NFC East now stacked with coaches. Mark Schlereth, Sean Salisbury talking about Gibbs when we return on the afternoon edition. All right, as promised, Mark Schlereth, Sean Salisbury here now on the afternoon edition. You guys are watching out there, all dressed up, ready to go. What'd you think, Sean?
I think that the Washington Redskins got the best coach available. He could have named his own price, and he deserves it. They'll be in the playoffs next year. That's what I think.
Really, that fast?
I
What
think
do you
he's
think,
that
Mark?
good.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you look at right now, one of the things that he said that is just so Joe Gibbs, and the thing you love about Joe Gibbs, he talked about relationships. I'm looking forward to the relationship that I'm establishing right now with Dan Snyder. I'm looking forward to the relationship that I'll make each individual player, that I will establish with each individual player. And that to me is bigger than anything. This day and age, X's and O's, the plays are the same. He'll learn all the nuances of how football has changed over the last 11 years. But the one thing you cannot teach is your ability to relate to people and your ability to create relationships. Joe Gibbs, a master of that, and he'll know every one of those guys inside and out. And that's why they'll play so hard for him.
And while with that, X's and O's do matter, and Mark's right about the relationships. You've got to have a guy who understands, because you can't treat everybody the same. As we both know, a superstar sometimes got to be treated different than a guy who's a free agent walk-on. That's just the way, the nature of the business. But with the X's and O's of this thing, if you think there's no stone unturned with relationships, I'll promise you, every single situation, a lot like Parcells or Belichick, you won't go into a game wondering. You'll go into a game knowing with Joe Gibbs.
What about the staff here, Mark? You're talking about Jack Burns, Joe Bugle, Greg Williams is coming in. I mean, putting together. And he also said in the press conference, if you're listening here on ESPN News earlier, that he and the owner already faced adversity. And then he said Dan Snyder has already stepped up to get that staff in place. I guess he's putting everybody together and said, look, you want to put the band back together? It's going to cost some money. Is that the way you read into that?
Oh, certainly. And I think right now you look at Joe Gibbs, and he's the president. He is the head coach. He is the guy that's telling Dan Snyder, this is the way I want to go about it, and you've got to get the proper pieces in place for me to have success here. And the other thing, you look at Joe Gibbs, what he'll do is he'll establish himself with guys that have been in the league, the last 11 years, so they know those new football nuances. And you heard one thing. You heard a lack of ego in Joe Gibbs' press conference. He said, listen, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have these guys get me up to speed, basically. I'm going to get caught up, and they're going to basically tutor me along the way so that I know football, so that I get caught up in what's going on in the football.
Well, if you're talking about Joe Bugle, and first of all, they should be paying these assistants a lot of money because they've earned it. These guys have had great reputation. You're talking about a guy who knows offensive line better than anybody, Joe Bugle, and Greg Williams, who was with Jeff Fisher during their Super Bowl run, goes over and takes over Buffalo. That's the greatest coaches hire assistants. They expect to be head coaches, and that's exactly what Joe Gibbs is doing.
Now, in the past 11 years, I mean, again, I don't think he misses much organization-wise because, again, he put together a NASCAR team that was winning championships. It's incredible. How about as far as his, being his own offensive coordinator? How can he get involved in that and still have his eye on everything else in the organization? Well,
I think it can be tough to do. But eventually what will happen is the offensive coordinator that he names or / quarterback coach or offensive assistant will know exactly what Joe's thinking, because you see a lot of Brian Billick, same way, with now Matt Cavanaugh calling the plays. That's the way it is. But Joe Gibbs understands, because I've played in his offense. What Denny Green ran, what we ran, because Jack Burns now, who's going with Joe Gibbs, ran the same system. We've run that same system, Mark and I both have. It is extremely quarterback friendly, to the point you'll know where to go, you'll know how you're protected. So as far as getting those things taken care of and Joe calling the plays, I don't think it'll be a problem. But what he'll eventually do is wean himself off that, Mark Schlereth, and get a guy who calls, who thinks just like Joe does.
Yeah, he will. And the basic thing about Joe Gibbs, beyond all the X's and O's, one thing you know about this team and about Joe Gibbs, fundamentally, this is a football team that will be sound. And he mentioned this, I want to bring teachers on my staff. I want guys that can relate and take things in the classroom, ideas and concepts, and be able to teach our players so they can go out onto the football field and they can translate those ideas and concepts into blocking schemes, into great positioning, into just smart football players. And that's what they're going to make there.
Yeah, because everybody that plays in the NFL now, 53 guys on a roster, are all physically gifted some way, shape, or form, some better than others. The difference that's going to separate them is mental toughness and the emotional toughness and how good you are as a student. Can you take the transfer what you do in the classroom and on the chalkboard and put it out there on the field and allow your physical skills to take over where you're reacting as opposed to thinking about it. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker you have a winner. That's why Marvin Lewis and Bill Parcells have been so successful so fast.
You mentioned Parcells. Now here, Parcells, Gibbs, Andy Reid, who's got the #1 team in the conference right now. Tom Coughlin, very good reputation now over with the Giants. Not everybody can win in the same year. Who gets the better of all this over a 3 to 5 year period?
Well, I mean, it's a tough conference right now, and that's the way it was. I mean, at one point, this conference, the NFC East, won 7 out of 10 Super Bowls. So this has been a conference, and this has been a historical perspective as far as great football teams within a conference. And a lot of times, what you end up doing is you beat everybody else. You beat all the other NFC teams. You beat all the AFC teams that you match up against, and then you kind of split throughout the conference. You end up with a 9-7, 10-6 record, but it's a good enough record to get you into the playoffs. And once you get into those playoffs, that's when these teams shine.
And not only that, you're far more time tested, because you tell me going into New York and dealing with a Tom Coughlin is going to be easy. No, I'm anxious to see who's going to out-prepare who. It's going to be one of those, I got it at 3, I'm going to get in at 2. Right. You in at 2, I'll be there at midnight. And I'm never leaving. So you're talking about, and the guy who's probably as far as the guy who doesn't have the biggest reputation as those 3, is Andy Reid. Yet he's earned it because he's been to 2 NFC championship games, and he may be the best X's and O's coach right now in that division.
One cliche that Joe Gibbs and Joe Bugle always used to use is, well, I'll give you 2 of them. We're calloused and we're battle tested.
Yep.
And when you play in a conference like the NFC East is going to be over the next few years with Parcells, with Andy Reid, with Coughlin, with Joe Gibbs, you play in a conference like that, you become battle tested. You become one of those teams that is calloused, that is hard. You can go on the road and you can have success in anybody's venue.
And you don't wear gloves or Band-Aids with those calluses. And philosophy of they know who to get and how to get them. All 4 of those coaches know how to do that.
All right, guys, great talking with you.
Thank you.
Conversation. Again, have more on this NFL Live tonight, 6:30 Eastern. You can see it on ESPN2. Mark Schlereth, Sean Salisbury. Guys, great talking to you. Great just listening to you. And his news conference at Redskin Park. Here he is right now as that press conference is wrapping up. Gibbs talking about putting his staff together. Joe Bugle, Greg Williams, among others. Again, made the playoffs 8 times in a 12-year stretch, and now back after 11 years out of the NFL. We'll take a short break. We're back to wrap things up on the afternoon edition right after this.
At Redskin Park, Joe Gibbs was reintroduced as head coach of the Washington Redskins. His .683 winning percentage ranks 3rd in NFL history, and in the postseason, his record was a sparkling 16-5 with 3 Super Bowl titles. But the Hall of Fame coach warns that was the past.
And from this point on, the past doesn't buy us much other than relationships. We got great relationships. I do know a lot about the town. And so we'll get to that in a minute, but it really, we're focused on the future. We want to try and do something great here, and that's the way I'm looking at it. It's a whole new deal for me. I got to prove myself, and all the coaches, we got to prove ourselves all over again.
Also, Mo Vaughn said he will not play in 2004. Next up, Around the Horn.
For Meal, the great coaches always seem to come back for more. Joe Gibbs is returning to a Redskins franchise that's endured, and pardon the pun, capital punishment in D.C. since his 1993 departure. Only 1 playoff appearance in those 11 years. Gibbs was officially reintroduced as the Redskins head coach last hour.
I reached a point in my life where, hey, you're looking, you love the thrill of trying to do something that's almost undoable. And so certainly this is probably as close to that as you can get. This is going to be super hard. I'm not kidding myself here. I really need a lot to learn, and I'm going in this realizing that some of those guys standing on the other sideline have been here, and probably we're going to have people around me to help cover that.
During Joe Gibbs' first stint in Washington, he continually praised Redskins owner Jack Kent Cooke for his support over the years, and no player was beyond Jack Kent Cooke's billionaire wallet. Let's fast forward to 2004 under Daniel Snyder, and the free-spending owner might be the only constant for Gibbs as he undergoes his 2nd tour of duty with the Redskins. The NFL's dynamics have changed considerably since Gibbs resigned following the 1992 season. Matt Weiner explains.
Joe Gibbs' final victory came in the '92 playoffs against the Minnesota Vikings, led by then first-year head coach Dennis Green, who started Sean Salisbury at quarterback that day. Green would stay in Minnie 9 more seasons before joining ESPN along with Sean Salisbury. A few things have changed since Coach Gibbs last roamed an NFL sideline. As Gibbs returns, Green has taken on the Arizona Cardinals, who were still known as the Phoenix Cardinals when Gibbs left. At least they haven't moved. In '92, the Rams and Raiders were still in L.A. The Oilers were in Houston, and the Browns played in Cleveland. They still do, but they didn't for a while. The league's also added 4 teams in 2 divisions since Gibbs last coached. The Ravens, Panthers, Jaguars, Titans, and Texans were non-existent in '92. Players were on the move as well in the interim. A new collective bargaining agreement the year after Gibbs left brought the free agency salary cap era of NFL football. The Seahawks were in the AFC during Gibbs' last season in '92. Seattle's current coach, Mike Holmgren, was in his first year in Green Bay, and in Week 4 started his backup quarterback, Brett Favre. Since, Favre became football's Iron Man and won 3 MVP awards and a Super Bowl. Speaking of quarterbacks, Marino, Kelly, Elway, Moon, Esiason, and Kosar were just some of the opening day starters still slinging it. And speaking of MVPs, Terrell Davis was drafted, became the league's most valuable, won a pair of Super Bowls, and called it quits, all in a span of 7 seasons, AG and BG, after Gibbs and before Gibbs. About the time the Broncos were sprucing up their lobby with Lombardi trophies, they also spiced up their uniforms. Denver was just one of the teams to radically alter its on-field look. Among the sartorial switches, the Rams swapped yellow for gold, the Bucs bounced tangerine for blood red and pewter, and the Patriots All-American look got slicker and silver. All 3, by the way, went to Super Bowls in their new threads. What hasn't changed since '92? Not much, but as Gibbs surveys the league's kicking landscape, you'll find a pair of Andersons who still haven't gotten the boot. Gary and Morton were each in their 11th season back in '92 and are still alive and kicking today. Bill Cowher, a rookie head coach when Gibbs retired, is the only one still leading the same team today. Gibbs was getting out the first time the same year Mike Ditka finished his term at Chicago, while Don and David Shula were for the first time head coaches at the same time. Bill Parcells was out of coaching in '92 and now on his 3rd team since, not including ESPN. Gibbs' first stop in D.C. ended with a 2013 loss in the NFC divisional playoffs to the 49ers, quarterbacked by Steve Young. Today, well, he works here too.
The Redskins have had a rough time of it in the 11 seasons since Gibbs first left Washington. Over that time span, the Skins' .423 winning percentage is the 3rd worst among NFC teams, bettering only the records of Arizona and New Orleans. We will hear from Coach Gibbs a little bit later on in SportsCenter. Still to come.